is just fantastic. Captain's log, subdate 210111.5. Ship efficiency is now at 41.3%, which is the bare minimum for 1/4 impulse, so we're moving at least. Crew reports are in, and crewman Bork has taken a dump in Ensign Spoon's broth, and apparently I need to deal with this. Okay. So what I thought I'd do today is have a little discussion about the interactions between creators and their supporters. Now yes, detractors can be added to this as well, but as that is normally a mostly negative encounter, I thought we'd focus on the supporters, because this can turn negative depending on the type of community involved, which I guess can handily be considered a part 2 to the pros and cons, the rise and fall of Discord, I guess, if you just take the word Discord in a more literal sense for the word itself, as opposed to the servers and chat rooms. I'll also add that this could also be considered a part follow-up to the online harassment video I did within the opinions-based series? Sure, let's go with that. As anyone that uploads to YouTube, a creator grows. They in turn grow and or cultivate a community. With that comes pros, i.e. motivation for example, to keep on going as a creator, and the cons which we'll get to later, along with a small amount of responsibility that in turn can grow. However, the responsibility does depend on the type of community that particular creator is growing. So for the sake of it, we're going to base this around commentary communities, because I find it easier as a commentary channel to articulate my concerns, issues, along with all the good points as well. There are plenty of those. So perhaps I should start with the pros, because it makes more sense to work our way towards the more inherently negative and toxic aspects of interactions between creators and supporters. I've not used the word fan for a reason. I find it very uncomfortable to say, so expect me to use supporter going forward. So for the good, we go to the fact that over 5.5 years ago I started on YouTube. And I have grown a community which in turn I never thought would happen, I never thought would work, and I never thought it would succeed in the sense that it has lasted as long as it has. And I would argue a lot of it doesn't really require me as a creator as much anymore, which is a very odd thing to say. But in turn many people have formed friendship groups that in turn have created their own servers, which I find to be hugely successful. Many creators give their communities nicknames. I have never personally done that, but there is a title typically assigned to a patron, and in turn because of the name of my server, it sticks. The server's called Moistonia, and patrons are called Moistonians. So I guess we'll go with supporters being Moistonians, the rest are loyal citizens. At first with that, I was very open. My DMs were very open. I would get communicated with on an increasing basis, which, I'll be honest, I didn't mind. It might sound a tad cocky or arrogant, but I've always had this mentality of if I can reply, I will reply. But over the last 2 years, that has had to change. I used to be very active, for example, on a Facebook page. For my YouTube channel, I was convinced to do it by Undoomed to create the page, and I was happy with it, to be honest. The interactions were lovely, insightful, informative. Good fun was had by me. I don't know if all, I'm sure some have blocked me, but for a number of reasons I had to stop. On Facebook it was because of the very thing I referenced in the online harassment opinion video, something which I'm going to link down below. By all means, give it a listen. It's more a personal experience when it comes to such a topic. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have made it, since that person's still trying to remove the video, even though I never mentioned them by name. The reasons I started over the last 2 years especially to close things down a bit more was because of how large my server grew, which I believe started with around 6 people, and now has over 150 people, which is still quite small when you compare to someone like Dankula's. But if I'm having issues with 150, how hard do you think these guys have it? Also, vastly different communities. For the second reason I had to close things down was because of the increasing number of people that used me as a somewhat dumping zone for their issues, which I don't take issue with that as a whole. The main issue I took with it was that it was becoming more time-consuming, because I have a mentality of, if there's a problem, let's look for the solution. But to find solutions, not the easiest. Hell, some people rejected solutions outright, which made me realize I was just being used. Or being dragged down with them, which doesn't work when you have someone you're engaging with that is remarkably apathetic. That being me, by the way. The third reason is the very reason I explain in the harassment video. If anything, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It is the problem of how does a creator handle inappropriate messages. I, being a bit delicate back then, handled it poorly, and it showed. But it is highly inappropriate for those kind of messages to be sent to the creator in the first place. Those people could be considered stans, stalkers, whatever you want to call them, really. There is a level of entitlement as well that goes with all of that, and it's very tricky to navigate if your intention is to try and find a way to placate them, to move them on instead of just hitting the block button, which in truth should have been my first port of call. For the sake of it, I'd like for you all to consider that lesson learnt. It only took me 2 years, and apparently I'm the smart one in my family. This issue as a whole, when it comes to messages between creators and supporters, does transcend Discord as an app. It can be applied to other platforms of any social media where exchanges between the creator and the supporter can take place, much of which can also, and I earlier said it, be attributed to a level of entitlement from the supporter, who believes because they've reached out they're entitled to a response, they're entitled to an exchange or more information than they are willing to share. This obviously comes down entirely to what the kind of relationship the creator wants to have with their supporters. It is not an overly easy one to navigate, but if a creator has never outwardly said that they are looking for love, it doesn't mean you get into their DMs and try and get some. Repzilla being a perfect example here with his message exchange. It is highly inappropriate. I guess my point with this is to highlight that while there are pros when it comes to cultivating communities for creators and of course supporters, there is still, even with all the pros, a line you shouldn't be seeking to cross. And yes, a lot of that comes down to you feeling the room, you the supporter, unless outwardly stated by the creator. That does not mean, though, that there isn't a level of responsibility on the creator, who should, if their DMs are open, for example, shut it down the moment they notice. If they want to shut it down, of course. As is well established, many creators are remarkably sleazy in DMs. I myself am no exception. I regularly send dick pics to Repzilla and White Sith Male, because why not? I want them to see at my magnificence. It's written along there. It doesn't matter. And with jokes aside, yes, there is responsibility for all, but something I've noticed I wanted to raise was this point of how one interprets what they see. Clearly there is an issue when it comes to feeling the room, and by extension, an inability to understand what the relationship is between the creator and the supporter. I would point out, for most creators and supporters that have tried relationships, they fail fundamentally because one is obsessed over the other. And also it looks like a bit of manipulation. It doesn't... No. Anyway, this is a very simplified version of what I had planned, but I wanted to raise it now because it does open a doorway to further discussions in this area, and that's what I wanted to do. I do want to know what you think. Please do let me know in the comments down below. If I don't see you on Twitch tonight for some trucking, have a fantastic Monday, and thank you all for listening.